Hello and most welcome to 1035, and I will try to look a little bit more at what is being, and you can contrast that, as I did earlier, with beings, which is absolutely different, whereas being is the great unknown, something that we never encountered. We cannot know what it is, which is really important to establish. Every try to understand it, it's impossible, should be impossible, because it doesn't have the characteristics of being something known. This is exactly what Heidegger is trying to point out. And I will see if it doesn't work with this rather grand idea that Kalle proposed. Start once more with taking up certain words from Heidegger, from this dictionary we worked with a little bit last year, I think it was. And I will just mention here, and I will make this into specific sub-series, or I will make it a completely different series. But this is just Heidegger and his neologisms. And I will begin with A. I was supposed to link to the dictionary. I do not remember the author for the moment. It will be in the link. We begin with A, and then I try to put that into context, so to put a twist to it, so that it could be understandable. But I have to point out once more, being coming from where we are coming, make our situation or our take on it very disadvantaged. It's very hard to get from this place to the understanding of Heidegger. Do not use your old tools trying to understand Heidegger. Do not try to make it fit into understanding of things you have in general. And it should never ever go with the old knowledge, because this is truthfully different and new. Well, the first, beginning with A, is aletheia or aletheia or aletheia. This is Greek for truth, truthfulness, frankness, sincerity. Alethis is true, sincere, frank, real, actual. There is also a verb connected to this, alatheon, to speak truly. The words are related to laphanein with an order form lethein, to escape notice, to be unseen, unnoticed, and lethe, forgetting, forgetfulness. An initial A in Greek is often privative, like the Latin in or the Germanic un. The privative alpha occurs in many Greek-derived words, anonymous, atheism, etc. So alathes then becomes no longer hidden or not hidden or unforgotten, or he or who does not hide nor forget. We reach the essence of truth, the openness of the open, from two directions: from reflection on the ground of the possibility of correctness, adequatio, and from recollection of the beginning, aletheia. The first procedure is characteristics of BT, being in time, that is, and early lectures in the second of the later works. But early on, Heidegger says that aletheon is to take out the hiddenness, Verborgenheit, to uncover, entdecken. And aletheia is uncovering, and alethes is unhidden. This has three implications. One, Truth is not confined to explicit assertions and discrete mental, primarily theoretical attitudes such as judgments, beliefs, and representations. The world as a whole, not just entities within it, is unhidden as much by moods as by understanding. 2. Truth is primarily a feature of reality. Being and the world, not of thoughts and utterances. Beings, etc., are of course unhidden to us, and we disclose them. Heidegger later coins Entbergen, Entbergung, Entborgenheit. To unconceal or unconcealing or unconcealment, since unlike unverborgen, they can have an active sense. Alathes means 1. Unconcealed, and borgen, sad of beings. 2. Grasping the unconcealed as such, being unconcealing. But beings, etc., are generally unconcealed. They do not just agree with the assertion or the representation. 3. Truth explicitly presupposes concealment or hiddenness. Dasein is in untruth, Unwahrheit, as well as truth. This means that falling Dasein misinterprets things. Untruth is not plainly falsity, nor is it hiddenness, is disguisedness, Verstelltheit of the truth. Later on, truth is still not falsity, but hiding, concealing. What conceals is no longer man, but being. There are 2 types of unconcealing. A, of the open, the world of beings as a whole. B, of particular beings within this open space. The first type, A, involves concealment. Everything was hidden before the open was established. That is the Lichtung. And concealment persists in that the open reveals only certain aspects of reality, not its whole nature. The second type, B, involves a concealment that we overcome partially and case by case. Plato errs in assimilating truth to light. We lose the idea of hiddenness and thus the private force of aletheia. The light is constant, never switched on or off, and reveals everything there is to anyone who looks. We lose the idea of the open, which must persist throughout our unconcealing of beings. A single light cannot account for both the openness of the open and for the unconcealing of particular entities. What he tries to explain here is the relationship between being and beings, and something that we haven't resolved and neither Plato could resolve. It leads to paradoxes, and you either strive into the directions of beings, which is the most common, or maybe you go into being. We need to have an explanation or an understanding for concealment as well. And this can also be explained in a higher level. You should not make such a grand difference between truth and falsity. When they are left into the open, they are there for experience. And that is, in a way, the most true is not in the statement, but in reality itself. The directly perceived, the presencing, that is the truth, or the real. So it's like truth is being the same as the real. There is no longer, in this case, in the highest case, made a difference. Whereas we usually make a dividing line and say there is truth and there is reality, and that truth of the reality could be proven to be later on or somewhere hidden from our thinking or understanding already proven to be false. No, says Heidegger, I can resolve the problem. I can have being and beings, and therefore truth and reality is possibly the same thing. And that is a completely different ballpark to the ordinary representative academia. This is why being coming from academia, me from philosophy, philosophy of science, cognition, put me at a disadvantage in understanding these things, because I already assume a truthfulness of a statement, a comment, or a thought. But what Heidegger is pointing to is that truth and reality is the same. That is very, very different. Not something we experienced before. And at that, it's a very interesting thing. It's a very enticing thing. It's like a new dish you never tried before. And delving into this makes Heidegger incredibly interesting. This is not going to be, as we say in Swedish, gammal skåpsmat. One could say this could be turning away of the idea of reusing things only and a freshness. But the Plato light is everywhere. It's like a fluorescent light high up in the ceiling, shining everywhere and having all truths. All truths are already out there. It's walking into the library, all the truths are in the books. They are there. They are beings existing. Plato's error was fateful, that we know. He, not Aristotle, who did his best to repair the damage, initiated the decline of Aletheia into correctness and truth as agreement. Aletheia was originally the basic feature of physis, roughly nature, and thus essentially rejects any question about its relation to something else, such as thinking. Correctedness in thinking, we have discussed that before. And I would say correctness of thinking comes up once you don't solve the problem between being and beings. In Plato it comes under the yoke of the idea. Idea, from the Greek idein, to see, refers on Heidegger's account to the visual aspect, ausein, of entities. The ascent of the prisoners out of the cave is a progressive correction of their vision of this idea and the entity whose idea it is. Hence, aletheia is no longer primarily a characteristic of being. It is yoked together with the soul and consists in a homeosis, a likeness between them. How grand isn't that? Homeosis has since become adequatio, and then agreement, and since Descartes, the relation between soul and beings has become the subject-object relation, mediated by representation, the degenerate descendant of Plato's idea. Truth becomes correctness, and its elbow room, Spielraum, the open, is neglected. It's a truth that no longer has any space to dwell in. And this is literally the space we're talking about when existence, having this space around us. A truth cannot present itself by exclusiveness or correctedness or division like. Truth is not related to divisionality against untruth or falsehood. That is not the take on truth. I think this sings in the same tune as we often heard here in Sweden. It was a myth. Did you know it's a myth? I think that directly associate to the idea of this grand light being everywhere, and there's no hiddenness, there's no shadow, everything is left in the open, and somebody tells you, did you know it's a myth that coffee comes from the coffee plants? It actually comes from a factory in Russia, or something to that effect. Feels grand to have an argument against that. Never liked that. Did you know it's a myth? Heidegger's account was attacked by Friedlander. It is not certain that alates come from a and lathein. Two, even if it does, it hardly ever means unhidden in Homer, Hesiod, or later authors, but has three main senses: the correctness of speech and belief, epistemological, yes, do remember that, the reality of being, ontological, and the genuineness, truthfulness, and conscientiousness of an individual or character, existential. 3. These three aspects of aletheia are united in Plato. The ascent from the cave is an ascent of being, of knowledge and existence. Heidegger misunderstands that. He assumes that if Plato regarded truth as correctness of apprehension, he has jettisoned its other senses, while if another sense reappears, this is because Plato is indecisive and ambiguous. The three senses are fused together in Plato. 4. Interpreting truth as unhiddenness would not save it from the modern subjectivity. Unhiddenness must be unhiddenness to someone. On 2 and 3, Friedlander is right. Heidegger accepts 2 and 3 implicitly. He attempts to find aletheia as unhiddenness in Plato, and that invariably fails. When Plato says that the things we make by holding up a mirror are not beings, te aletheia, and that the things painters make are not alethe, Heidegger takes it to mean that things in mirrors and painters are not unhidden. He also says to understand how we can be said to make things by holding up a mirror, we must take making in a special Greek sense. But things are no more hidden in a mirror than in the flesh. Plato's point is that things in a mirror are not real, not alethe in the ontological sense. It is also untrue that idea and its near synonym eidos, form, mean aspect, appearance. The assumption that the Greeks, if no one else, invariably used words in accordance with the etymological roots is groundless. Heidegger's interpretation of aletheia and Plato are indefensible. It does not follow that Friedlander is right on 4. This neglects Heidegger's distinction between the open and the unconcealing of particular beings, and this his belief that we are made and revealed as what we are by the opening of the open, not ready-made waiting for things to be unhidden to us. The Kantian vocabulary rejected by Heidegger, Friedlander thinks in empirical rather than transcendental terms. Heidegger is far closer to Plato, properly interpreted, than he acknowledges. This reminds me very clearly, and I think this could help to explain from Ian McGilchrist once more. When you listen to something, You first actively send something out, and that must be done with a balanced organism. This sending out is the sound from your own ear, and that goes equally right with vision, as in Plato. Vision itself also is a sending out, a beam, as I mentioned before. The sending out will have a sort of a response cry, a response word, and then the space is needed. What is this space? This is space and time to let the thing come into being with a big B, and then we need to let it. And I'm absolutely think that Heidegger was right on this point. This is something Plato does not let the being be, because it doesn't have any space. There's either the idea is correct or not correct, either perfectness or not perfectness. But this is not how it works. Time is a part of it, and I think would have Plato included hearing, which is much more easy to understand that time is an important feature. He would have understood that letting something to come into existence, that means a hiding and an uncovering at the same time. That means light and shade is absolutely important. And I think it works perfectly well, as Heidegger says, in Plato it's constant light. It's light from all angles, it's even light coming underneath. And then you get a sort of correctness, and that later descent into getting lower and lower, and then we have representation in modern time. The idea of correct thought, and you can say to other people, I did not think correctly. There I see my thinking fault. In the end, thinking seems to be a long stream of things that are either correct or incorrect, and you can find this incorrectness or correctness in your thinking, and you can point it out. Absolute nonsense. It doesn't work at all like that. And it's showing us everything in the wrong direction, absolutely. The Thea, Alathea, is brilliant, and it's very similar to Susie Froebel sending out actively something like a messenger, and then you get a response cry, and that response cry, let that be. Don't give it a face, don't give it a name, don't give it a flesh. By doing so, you put that into the light, and then it disappears. It doesn't work that way. You let it be there. It can come out. The Lichtung is not all there is. There is also darkness, the untruth, the falsehood. It's absolutely important. And we think by casting away falsehood, kicking it out like a scapegoat, we achieve something. I think Heidegger proves we don't achieve anything at all. We become cannibalistic in our own thinking, and we do not further thinking that way. We're diminishing it. We think we are elevating thinking, and Plato thought that, but we are putting it down. We don't let thinking be. We don't let our own thoughts be. They become either correct or incorrect, not correct. And then starts this constant busyness, as I mentioned in the previous lecture. I can actually associate to that directly, that busyness, that rumination that everyone does. Friedlander doesn't have a point there. I think he's out of his grip. It's a marvelous observation by Heidegger, and it's absolutely usable and more open. And since everything is coming from this openness that is light and not light, that is the true origin. And I think that sort of shows experientially that Heidegger has right. It's not a correctness of his words. It's something far, far beyond that. It's a correctness of experience. And now, of course, we left academia and we went a big step into understanding Heidegger, not the Yale School of Literary Criticism or any other academic line where there's a pattern for understanding. That is the mistake of Plato, putting everything under the light and saying that is incorrect, that is correct, that is true, that is falsehood. Falsehood is absolutely necessary. It's not a bad thing. It's a simplification done by Plato, almost going to the region of ignorance. Take away falsehood and then we created something. No, you haven't, Plato. You didn't do anything. You didn't do the work. You were sitting too long under the sun being lazy. That's what you did, Plato. This is much, much sharper, more distinguished, encompassing. This is true understanding, and it's done both with etymology, but also by experience. Nothing can beat experience. There is the trump for everything, because there is from where the representations and the correctness come. That's the point of origin. That's the starting point. I say thank you very much and have a very, very pleasant afternoon. Bye bye for now.